Hello everyone and welcome to this week's edition of 1874 at Home. Thank you all for joining once again. Now, first of all, I will apologise about the quality of last week's video. Unfortunately, we had quite a few technical issues from my side, really. The internet didn't quite work, so the quality wasn't as good. So we didn't want to put that out, but we managed to salvage some of the audio for you. And a big thanks to Jacko and Mike Rowell, who did that for us. It was a great interview, just a shame that it couldn't go out in its full capacity. And now, obviously, this week we were supposed to do it with Scott McGowan, but obviously, due to unforeseen circumstances, that couldn't happen. But all of us wish Scotty well and hope that he'll be okay in the next few days. However, we are joined by our co-manager, Paul Bowyer. Paul, how are you doing?
Yeah, not so bad, thanks. You?
Yeah, not too bad. So, what have you been up to then during lockdown? You're a teacher, so how much of the time have you been in school still doing bits and bobs? What have you been up to?
Yeah, we've been in once or twice a week at the moment. So my role's changed quite a lot from teaching at the minute, actually. So yeah, we're running the canteen. My department are feeding all the kids and the staff that have been in each day. So we're looking after the key workers. There's probably been about 40 or 50 in each day. So still quite a few pupils coming in and staff. So doing a lot of that. Also teaching online a lot, which is really different, and it's been quite a steep learning curve really from something that I've never done before. So that's been quite interesting, and yeah, it's all been really different, I suppose. For everybody, especially people in education and people in various other jobs that have had to change exactly how they work.
Absolutely. Now, I'm quite interested in that transition from being a design and technology teacher to running the canteen. How have you found that?
It's been interesting, yeah. I mean, the reason we do it is because I work with two guys that trained as chefs, so I think they just thought it was an easy fix and put them two in, and they know what they're doing. But then on my days, yeah, the good thing is we've got somebody who's in there every day, so she pretty much runs the show, and I just put a few bacon sandwiches out and clean the tables really. But yeah, it's been good. It's been good to do something different as well.
Absolutely. Now, one thing I did see that you're up to, and it was over Twitter and went around quite a bit, is that you've been making visors for those at Leighton Hospital to help them when there was a PPE shortage. Do you want to talk about that for a little bit?
Definitely. There was a big call really from design technology teachers across the country to get involved and help out if they had the equipment. And we've got the equipment in schools, so we started to make 2,500 in total now, is how many visors we've made. And they've gone out to everyone from hospital workers, on the front line, to care homes, to people who work with vulnerable adults or people in shops. So a whole range of people all across Cheshire. It's been really good to get involved with, and we've had the vast majority of staff at the school have managed to come along and help out as well. And it's been real community spirit, I suppose. So it's things like that as well, where people just muck in together as well.
Absolutely. Now, that is a mammoth effort for 2,500 visors. How did that whole process start then? Who came up with the initial idea for it, and how do you organise that many people to sort out something like that?
Yeah, there's a group of design technology teachers, so it's like this Design Technology Teachers Association across the country, and basically somebody in that just put this file out that you can laser cut. So because we've got a laser cutter at school, it was an easy fix really. So I just went in one day and started to make a few and see how it worked out. And I think we made 30 in the first day, and then we got up to 100, and that was 4 of us making it, and it was non-stop all day. And then a company from the Midlands put out that they could ship some of the bands that make the head visors. They could ship them to the school, so we didn't have to make them. Just a matter of us assembling it. So as soon as we heard about that, we thought, well, that's got to be a bit easier for us. And we set out the sports hall and got, I think it was about 30 staff in, and socially distanced, and then got them in teams. And then it was just a matter of making as many as we could. So we made 1,000 on the first day, and then we had another go at it. And and then it's just the organisation really of then the staff having to deliver them to wherever they live locally. But it's been really worthwhile, and we got loads of good feedback, from these places that are just crying out for any sort of help really.
I mean, that's one of the key examples, isn't it, of communities coming together during this period. There's so much uncertainty that's been around the last few months, and that's just a key example of your school that's been doing that. Now, if we move on to your career in football, you mentioned to me earlier in the week that you started at West Brom as a schoolboy, and then you got a part-time YTS at Shrewsbury. What was youth football like for you?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, my dad took me everywhere really. So, from probably 10 years of age, he just started to drive me wherever the football was on, like I suppose a lot of parents have to do. And the thing with that is he's a massive Wolves fan, and my granddad was a massive Wolves fan as well. So as soon as West Brom kind of I was offered to go down there. So, we had a bit of a discussion about that. But yeah, it was brilliant. And, there's lots of fond memories of times where you play against people and you go to this training grounds at Leicester City and things like that. And you play against some of the really decent players that then went on and made something in the game. And it was always something that I was sort of brought up on, really, football, from a young age. Family were into it, and I suppose I just got the bug from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Then moving on to your adult career, really, you spent 9 years at Market Drayton. You played for Nantwich, you played at TNS, you played at Congleton, and then before moving to 74. What was it that made you join 74 in the first place? Obviously, you were there right from the start. We were a relatively new club. There wasn't, much history to do with the club at all. Obviously, there was history about why we came about. But in terms of an actual team being formed and put together, what was it that made you join the club?
Yeah, there was a few of us that were playing at All Sager, and I think the manager, John Brown, who's quite well known around Northwich, used to play for Witton, but we won't mention too much about that. He decided that he didn't want to manage All Sager anymore, and he got in touch with Streety, I think, and put a good word out and said, listen, there's going to be 5, 6, 7 players that, looking for new clubs, and obviously 74 is setting up, so would you be interested? And that's how it started. And I just went down first training session with Mitch was there, and quite a few other players that started in the early days of 74 with the first pre-season, and I'm not too sure too many made it into the first into the league program, if you like, because the first training session there was about 40 people there.
Yeah.
So it was really, I don't quite know how Streety did it, to be fair, because it's quite a mammoth task to try and get a club started from nothing. It's not something that anybody's used to doing. So that's how it came about, really, at 74. And I'd seen it as a big opportunity. I thought that there would be quite a lot of potential in the area for a club to, once it had been set up, to maybe grow quite a lot. And I'd seen it at various other clubs. And I just thought it was a really good opportunity, because I knew that I was kind of coming towards the end of playing, and I thought, well, I'll give it one last chance, really.
Absolutely, you mentioned that, and I think that was a mammoth task from Streety, because you are forming a club completely from scratch. I don't think there'll be many others, other clubs like FC United maybe, and all these other type of fan-run clubs. You are forming a club from scratch. You've got to find all these new players, people. You don't know how many people become invested in the club. You don't know how it'll quite go down. There's always a bit of uncertainty, but then, as you can see, we're here now. We've got a brilliant club set up, and that is partly down to Streety in a way, because he's the one who laid the foundations for the team, and we've seen the club grow. Now, you started out playing for the club. I think it was last time you played was 2014, before you became assistant manager. What were the conversations that led to you becoming that?
Well, I'd always thought about maybe getting involved in some way, and I think it was something that I'd thought, what am I going to do with my Saturdays? Because I'd not really been used to doing anything other than, we'd always go out as a kid and watch a football match on a Saturday with my dad somewhere. If Telford weren't at home, we'd go and watch anywhere in the non-league. So I thought it was something that I'd want to get involved with. And then after a few games, and I wasn't really playing, I never went to speak to Streety about it, but we'd had a few conversations about, some of the younger lads and what I thought of various players and players at the club and stuff. And then he just sort of said, would you fancy getting involved and giving me a hand? Because obviously, he had Ducky was helping him out, and Conky was there as well, but they were playing a bit more than me as well. And I think it's always good to have somebody next to you on the sideline to share an opinion, even if this is what we're going to do, and maybe I'd come back with something, and have you thought about this? So that's really how the conversation started, and I've got a lot to thank Streety for, because he did give me that opportunity to get involved with the club. And if he hadn't done that, you kind of think, well, I'd have probably wanted to play a little bit more, and you never know what might have happened, really, if I wasn't playing a lot at 74, because we had some really good defenders at the time. So that's how it started off, and then really it just kind of grew from there, and quite a steep learning curve, and a few different things, it change as soon as you go to a management side of it. But yeah, it's something that I kind of look back at and think it was a good decision, really.
Absolutely. What was it like working with Streety? Obviously, he's been an experienced manager around at this level. He was at Winsford before. He's been at various different clubs. What did you learn off him that was key and you brought into managing the club now?
So much. I think that you've got to stick true to what you believe in, I think. And really, it's about, regardless of what other people think, you've got to stick strong with what you're thinking about a game or a selection, or why a player's not playing, and comments that you might get from the sidelines from supporters and so on. And I think I think that he was very good at doing that. And, you know, it's not that he didn't care what other people thought, because he did. And he sometimes he cared a bit too much, and you won't mind me saying that. But I think that's probably the biggest thing, really. And that's the difference, that from a player to then going into management. I think as a player, you turn up, and if you're playing or you're getting involved, that's probably your number one thought, really. And definitely at management, it's trying to communicate with everybody and speak to everybody about why they're in the team. And Street did quite a lot of that early on, and you know, I kind of learned from that along the way.
Now, it was in the 2015-16 season, I think, when Ian decided to resign, and then you and Goody both took over. What were the conversations that you had with each other and had with the board? Was there other people that you knew that were in the race to maybe become the management, or was it always a set in stone sort of idea that maybe you and Goody would go together and then you will become the new managers of 74?
Well, it's quite funny, because when the club was set up, before Street had been announced as manager, I'd just put in my application, not because I thought I'd get the manager's job at that point, but I just thought I'll put in, and you know, if somebody more experienced gets the job, and they wanted somebody alongside them. And then obviously I went as a player, and it developed from that. So they kind of knew that I was interested originally, I guess. And as soon as Street decided to move on, we hadn't really seen it coming, or I certainly hadn't, from, you know, and so we just sat down with Goody, and it kind of made sense. I think it made sense for the two of us with the time in the season that it was. I think it was March time, and obviously it was relatively close to the signing deadline for new players to come in or players to go. And there's always that concern as a club, I think, about, well, if a manager goes, quite often a lot of the players will go, and you don't want that late in the season, obviously. So I think it worked for the club's point of view to keep a bit of consistency and keep us both at the club till the end of the season. It certainly worked from my point of view to get involved and see what we could do and see how it went. And obviously, Goody's a little bit more experienced than me at it, and he'd been at various clubs before, and having a chat together, we just thought it felt right. We just thought that with where the club was and where the team was, we felt that given a bit of time, we could maybe do something and improve it. And I think you've got to have that bit of self-belief in it, and I don't think we'd have taken it on. But I know a lot of people probably in the club and outside the club thought, I don't know about that appointment, really, because, you know, I'd never managed before, and Goody had done it a bit before. But I think it was a bit of a gamble, and I think it's probably a gamble for us too to have taken it as well, because it could have backfired on the club or on us. But thankfully it hasn't done. And you know, certainly in that first season and the pre-season especially, I learned a lot about management and a lot about you know, dealing with players, and the fact that until somebody kind of signs for you as a club, you can never kind of take their word for the fact, because obviously at our level of football, players move between clubs quite regularly.
Now, that was one of the questions I had for you a little bit later on, but we'll ask it now. In terms of recruitment for players, how does that necessarily work? How clear far down the line you'll have interest in a player, but how far down the line is it until you can realise, okay, well, we can plan that they will now sign for us? Because you can never know, because obviously with 7 days, people can speak to clubs. You know, you can think that they'll be joining you, but then they can go somewhere else. What's the system like as a manager?
Yeah, I think don't think it differs too much from club to club. I think the one thing that 74's got is obviously the support and the setup and the quality of the squad that we've had over the last couple of seasons, especially. I think players that you maybe approach are attracted by those things, and that's what makes the club stand out over other clubs at our level of football. So I think that's a big thing. But yeah, it's even so, you know, we've had players that have turned up for training in pre-season or during the season, and we've spoken to them, and then for whatever reason they've decided not to join us. Sometimes it's a genuine reason, you know, they just don't feel it's right for them. Sometimes another club will come in and offer them more money, whatever it might be, really. But I think the players that we've signed, the majority of the players that we've signed, and certainly the ones we've got now, have got a certain temperament about them, and they've all bought into it. And I think that it's been mentioned quite a lot, hasn't it? But they've bought into the ethos of the club as well, I think, and that's a massive part of it all.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, that was the next question I did have down. What was it that made you buy into the whole ethos of the club?
I think it was the fact it was supporter led, and obviously, you know, I've been through that with Telford as a supporter and seen how that can set up, and I'd seen teams like FC United and the potential and how they grew it, and I thought, if it's done right over the first few seasons, then there's no reason why 74 can't really take off. And as soon as you turned up to the first friendly at Lostock, and you've got all those people around the ground there, and I thought this could really be something. And I think it's grown in lots of different ways over the period of time that the club's been there as well. And I think it's a credit to everybody off the pitch and also the lads on the pitch. You look through the squad now, and we've got a lot of players that have played 50 games, 60 games, over 100 games for us, and probably that's unrivaled in a lot of teams at our level as well. And I think players that maybe have gone and come back, they've done that maybe because we're a good fit for them, and also they know that they'll be well looked after by people at the club, and the support that they get home and away is something that, again, you go and watch another team at our level, and you don't really very often see anything like you get when you see us at home or away. So I think that's something that helps keep the players in as well.
Absolutely. Now, the transition I think that the club has had is remarkable over such a short period of time. You can see from the social media, from even the kits that we've got, the home one, the new away one, the new home one that will be coming out this summer, the social media I just mentioned before, all our different outreaches that we've got, the players that come in that want to play for us. It's such a massive transformation, and obviously the move to Barnton has really helped that as well and taken us to another level.
Yeah, I think the move to Barnton's been one of the best moves that the club's made, really, because it's not so much the fact that we were playing in Winsford, but to play in Northwich and to get back to Northwich, I think has been a massive step for the club. And I think the improvements at the ground have been superb as well. The pitch certainly improved last season, and we're hoping that it's going to be better again for this season coming. The atmosphere at Barnton, because everybody's a bit closer, I think that's been a really big factor. Lots of games where we've maybe won in the dying minutes of the game, and then you come off towards the top corner, and everybody's stayed and everybody's celebrating together. And really, a lot of the time at Winsford, you were walking away from the supporters as you left. So I think the club moving to Barnton, has been a really, really big step. And like you say, the extra stuff off the pitch, the kit, the flags that people get, the level of support, the social media, the reports that have been out in the paper, on Sky TV, it's been ridiculous how it's kind of grown from a club at the start that didn't have, much other than a fantastic group of people that wanted to put a club together.
Absolutely. So obviously you've had a couple of Zoom meetings with the players before. How are all of the squad doing at the moment? What's the mentality like? What's the mood around the camp?
Well, not everybody's managed to work out Zoom yet, so we've not quite had everybody on. But yeah, it's been good. I think everybody's desperate. No matter what you do, I think you're desperate to go and do something different, aren't you? Everybody wants to get out of the house a little bit more, get back to some kind of normality, and I think the lads are very much, in line with that. Obviously, some of them are still working, some of them aren't working, have been furloughed. One or two are not sure whether their jobs are going to be there when all this passes. So it's very uncertain. And I think the one thing that football gives for everybody is that bit of consistency. And it doesn't matter what job you've got. It doesn't matter, whether you've got a large family, no family, whether whatever age you are. I think football's fantastic at bringing people together. And I've certainly missed that over the last few months. And I know a lot of the lads have as well. And so to get people to see each other on Zoom and just have a bit of a chat and a bit of banter flying around from one or two that think they can throw the banter around. And I think that's really helped, because it was a really strange end to not playing, really, not the season, but just not playing anymore from, the Barnoldswick game, where everyone said, well, we'll probably see you at some point in the week or in the next couple of weeks, to not even seeing each other 3 months down the line.
Absolutely, because they were taking it a game-by-game basis at that point, and we were due to play Bursko on the Tuesday, and at that point it sort of looked, okay, well, this might go ahead, and then all of a sudden a couple of their players then came down with illness, so then that game got cancelled and nobody's seen each other since. How's everyone doing with that? The players, obviously, they haven't seen each other for a while. How good is it for these Zoom meetings, like you mentioned, to keep that bit of community together and keep that consistency?
It's been brilliant for them, and I think it's probably been more for me and Goody as well, because they've got the WhatsApp chat between the lads, and obviously we're not part of that, so there could be anything going on in it. And I think it's fine sending the message to say, how are you doing? Hope the family's okay. Hope to see you soon. But it's not the same as when even if we're just chatting on Zoom. And we went through this week. We went through what the plans are for when we can get back to doing little bits, and sort of the plan about when pre-season's announced, and if hopefully we get a bit of warning about when the season starts. So you get your usual 6 or 7 week run up to the season, what training will look like, and what the sessions are. And Goody's done a bit more work than me on Huddle, which is where we get the games filmed and you can do a lot of analysis. So we've worked a bit on that, and we've got more plans on how we're going to work with individuals and give them more feedback, really. So we've just gone through the basics with the lads just to make sure, that they know that we've got plans there, and obviously when things are given the green light to do a bit more, then we've got things in place to be able to do that.
I mentioned Huddle there, and that's one of the things I think makes the club so different to every other one at this level, is the intricacy and the detail that goes in to the analysis of each different game. You can pick up different things with set pieces, etc., and really analysing the games back. It's the intricacies that we see from there that really stands out from our performances, that the care and detail goes in off the pitch from yourself and Goody, and then you can see it on the pitch. And I think that's another part of the reason for why we played so well, isn't it, last season?
It's a massive part, and I think at the start of it, a lot of people in the the players, and maybe us as well, we didn't want the games to just be filmed for the sake of it, because it's a lot for somebody to do. And I know originally it started off like that, and it was put on Twitter for supporters that don't always come to the games and can't make it. The highlights were put on, and that's fantastic. But we were then discussing how could it be more beneficial for us and for the players as well. So yeah, each week. Last season, each week the players could, access Huddle and watch their highlights back and various analysis, and Goody would put comments on about phases of play, and we'd talk to them in training and before the game about set plays or periods of play where they could maybe do a little bit better, or things that they did really well at. And now the idea is to take that forward one step more. So each week the players will get clips of their performance and various aspects of the game, and we can look at, for example, we've looked at all sorts of things like the amount of passes that you string together, how you move the phases of play from one side to the other of the pitch, how certain players interact, where shots are taken from, percentage of chances taken, and so on. So there's some real important things that I think we've brought out of that, rather than sometimes it would maybe for a lot of players, and you turn up, you play your game, and then next week you come back and the management would say, well, I think you need to do a little bit better in this aspect. For us now, we've got, this is the factual, information about where your performance was at. These are how many shots you had. This is how much how many passes you gave away, and so on. And I think collectively as a team as well, sort of as a defensive unit or an attacking third, where our strengths are and things that we need to work on a little bit more. So really, it could be your full-time job on that. It's absolutely unbelievable, the amount of information. I think it's now picking out the most important elements of that and using it to our advantage.
Now, you mentioned to me in my Northwich Guardian column for the club that they needed to raise the standards again next season, because other clubs are going to want to raise their standards. We set the pace last year, so they're going to want to match that and try and go one better. What do you think out of all that analysis that's been put forward? Where do you think that we can raise our standards to even go one better again next season?
I think it's maybe a little bit more about reflecting on where a particular person's strengths are. And I don't mean, if they're a wide player, for example, they think, oh, well, I've got to stay out wide. It is that, but it's also about making sure that they understand when they get in certain positions, whether they are successful at scoring from those positions or getting the shots on target, or whether there's quite often somebody in a better position for them. And I think it's looking at collectively as a unit, maybe in some of the games where we did concede more than one goal, or we made a mistake, learning from that experience, really. And I know Goody mentioned it a few weeks ago, but games like the Earlham game at home and Barn Alswick away stand out because there were some mistakes in that which were not seen a lot last season. And I think it's that understanding of when the mistake happens, to make sure that it doesn't happen again in the game, and that people get around each other and there's a reason for that mistake to happen. So it's little things like that all over the park that we all need to reflect on a little bit and hopefully improve defensively and in the attacking third, because when you look at the amount of chances we took, although we scored so many goals, we actually needed a few chances to score those goals, probably a few too many at times. And it's interesting that we seem to score much more in the second half of games, maybe because other underlying factors like teams set up to get through to half time, or fitness becomes a better advantage for us in the second half. So there's lots of other things to do with that, but I think it's looking at the reasons behind it as well.
Now, obviously, we've spoken many times this season about we effectively could have 5 new signings by the time the season comes round, with Jack Erland, Ryan Jackson, Jack Pritchard, Ryan Mitchell and Kyle all coming back. How important is that? Because a lot of them players as well, they are versatile. You've got Ryan Jackson, Joe Woolley, they're big players who can play in the wing. They could even play down the middle if you needed them to. All these sorts of players that are versatile to come back. How important would that be that they will be added into the squad? It makes it more competitive again.
It does. It's massive for us because I think anyone will say if you've had a fairly successful season, and last season you could argue would have been fairly successful. I think once you've had that success, to just say we'll just stay with the same, do exactly the same the season after, I think you'd be kidding yourself if we just thought we could just turn up and play exactly the same way and get the same outcome. And that's not to say that we need new players in. That's to say that everybody needs to strive that little bit more to overcome teams. And we maybe saw towards the end of the games that we played, more and more teams setting up to just say, right, we're going to get a point if we can, and we're going to try and frustrate 74. We saw that with the very last game. Barnolds did it really well. Skem away, they did it to a degree. Litherland at home was another one that was, quite nip and tuck really in terms of us not managing to break sides down quite as much because they just came really for try and get that point. So I think that's where different options in the squad will hopefully help us in the future.
Now, you mentioned that those sorts of teams like Barnolds were kind of the last game of the season. Runcorn Town was another one I was thinking of at home. These sorts of games where we didn't maybe not struggle to break them down, but they also defended really resolutely and defended well. Is that something you're going to look to prepare for at times this season? Do you think more sides will come and do that, especially when they come to play us when we're at home? Do you think more sides will set up in a defensive manner to try and get a point against us?
I kind of think that a lot of sides would do that. And if I was playing against us, you'd probably think about that as well, because we've played sides in previous seasons, maybe away from home. I can think of a few examples where, we've changed the way that we played. I'm talking, 2 or 3 years ago. And I think a lot of sides would probably think about doing that. And we've, me and Goody have already had discussions about how we could maybe improve that element of our game when teams do come and put 11 men behind the ball, and how we can get, more movement and be more of an attacking threat and keep hold of the ball and move teams about a little bit, because a lot of teams at our level maybe wouldn't have the discipline for 90 minutes to be able to do that. You're just looking for that one opportunity, which, like the Litherland game, where you get, we had a few opportunities in the game, but really the goal that we got was from Jacko at the centre half, and it kind of, a passage of play with him ending up in the, in the 6-yard box to score the goal. So it's things like that we need to maybe have, a little bit more work on for next season. But I think it's as well, by the time that you get in a normal season, by the time you get to Christmas time, teams know a little bit more about other teams in the league, and obviously, the teams near the top, I think a lot of sides are more wary of them anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. What are the difficulties of managing a side like ours? Because you've got such a competitive squad and you've got to try and keep everyone happy and keep the mood up. And obviously, you're a happy side whilst you're winning, but obviously people are still to be getting opportunities. What difficulties does that throw up?
Yeah, I think the hardest thing about it is the conversations when you're leaving players out. And I think that's something that personally, it's been a big learning curve for me, because you look at the squad that you've named there, the lads that are coming back, and it got to a point last season where we were leaving 1 or 2 out of the squad each game. And it's not because we don't rate them as players. It's not because they don't fit into our passage of play and our system and how we want to set up. It's more about that selection on that particular day, and a few other things taken into account. And quite often the player that we left out then came either straight back into the side or were on the bench the next game anyway. And I think that although every player wants to play, a lot of the players that went out of the side, whether they went onto the bench or went out the squad, their attitude was, I'll show them, I'll come back and I'll prove myself that I should have been playing in that game, even if we won the game previously. And that's really what you want. The lads were absolutely fantastic. And I really can't think of anybody last season that went about things in the wrong way. And I think that's what I mean by the temperament of the squad. Every single player, even if they were left out, came to speak to us in the right way. They didn't throw the toys out the pram. They were upset that they weren't playing, and they made it clear why they thought they should be playing. But I think I think that's the toughest challenge, if you like, is it doesn't matter whether you win the game 6-0, there's always players that are not happy because they haven't played or they haven't been in the squad or whatever, you know. And I think that the understanding is that you might not have played that game, but you'll be really important for us in a future game.
Absolutely, yeah. Just a final couple of questions from me before we move on to some of the other stuff. What's your vision as a manager with Goody over the next few years? Do you have like a longer term plan that you're looking to play for?
Well, it's not something we talked about really. I think we just want the club to thrive a little bit and to be as successful as the people at the club want it to be. And I don't think anybody would want to manage a team for it to just tick over and be, you know, lower half of the table every season. I think every club has to have ambition to better their levels and to improve themselves. And I don't think we're any different with that. We certainly think that the team that we had last season should easily compete at a higher level. And I think that, you know, our ambition would be to be managing at a higher level with 74. And, you know, certainly the players, they should be all striving to play at the higher level. And I know we've got a good mixture, really. We've got lads that have been there and are now at our level, and lads that are fairly young that want to get to that level. And there's no reason why they can't, because they're a talented bunch. It's now about how we do that and how we get to that next step. But I think that's our, you know, our aim, our ambition really is to get to that next level and to test ourselves as management, and, you know, for the players to test themselves, because everyone should be wanting to better themselves.
Absolutely. And I suppose that sort of answers my next question of, if you had to set a target to improve on for next season, what would that be? So I assume from that is, you know, trying to challenge for promotion, be one of the teams up there again, improve on the way we played in the Vars this season, and again, have another successful Macron Cup season.
Yeah, listen, every team will be the same, won't they? You know, there's lots of teams, and I think it's a really tough league. There's lots and lots of teams in the league that, if they get the right players, or maybe they've got a bit more consistency in terms of the side that they can pick, I think that they would fancy themselves. But that's certainly got to be, you know, our aim to be challenging and you know, to put ourselves up there at the higher end of the table, definitely. And I think you're right with the Vars. The Vars was a disappointment. I think the FA Cup was as well. I think that, you know, we missed an opportunity with Whitby, and I think we were a little bit unlucky on the day. You know, we gave a soft goal away. We had one or two opportunities to really, you know, take it to them a little bit more, I think. And they were really worried about us. I think it's another team that hadn't seen us. I think, you know, they were 2 leagues higher, flying at the top of the league at the time. And I think they just came down and thought that they would be able to beat us. And it didn't quite work for them as easily as I think they wanted. Certainly they were worried with the last 5 minutes of the game as well. But yeah, I think if we can play in the FA Cup, obviously no one knows yet, but if that goes ahead, then yeah, we want to challenge in everything we can. And it might come a point where we can't do that, but that's our ultimate aim, is to be as competitive in those.
Absolutely. Now here comes on to the more interesting questions that aren't as serious. Would you rather have feet for hands or backwards knees?
See, I'm not really a feet person. So I'm going to go backward knees, because I just think you could get away with it a little bit more. Because if you stood still and you stood upright, no one would know, would they? It's only when you walk. Yeah. So maybe you could get, yeah. So I'll go backwards knees, I think, on that.
I think I'd be the same. Would you rather fight a Scott McGowan-sized duck or a duck-sized Scott McGowan? So 100 duck-sized Scott McGowans. I wrote the question wrong.
100, right. By the way, I've been completely stitched up here. You realise that, because Scott was supposed to be coming on and now it's me instead. And then last week you had Jacko and Corral as a little double act. You've had Kyle, who had everybody welling up and in tears. Matt and Goody, there was no pressure on them. Now I'm here. Would it rather fight it?
Yeah. Would you rather fight a Scott McGowan-sized duck or a 100 duck-sized Scott McGowan?
See, if you've ever seen Scott on the pitch, he likes to shout it from a distance, doesn't he? And then
when he gets close, are you saying he's bottle?
I think he's the sort of person who'd shout it from a distance and then run off quickly. I mean, I'd never catch him if he ran off, but I think I would go for I think I'd go for just the one Scott.
Good choice. And what would your 5-a-side 74 team be from the whole time you've been at the club?
Yeah, that's an awkward one, isn't it? Because if I pick any of the lads that are currently with us, I'll just get absolutely slated. So I'm definitely not going to pick any of the lads. Not to say that none of them would get in it, but I can't pick any of the lads that are with us. So keeper, I'd have to go Conkey, just because he absolutely drove me mad at times. Absolutely drove me mad. He's got a heart of gold, but there's times where I shared a lift with him to the games as well. So not only was he in my ear on the pitch, he'd be in my ear in the car. And there was sometimes I just couldn't share a lift with him. I had to just say, I'll meet you there, because I just can't put up with you. So I'd definitely have Conkey in goal. I think I'd have Adam Foy. I think he was really good, Adam, and he had a horrible injury, and he would have been a great player for us, Adam. I had a lot of respect for him. Wardy, I think he's got to be in there. In glimpses in games, I think Wardy was somebody that you could really rely on to pull it out of the bag. So I definitely have him. I'd probably then. I don't think we're going defensive here. I think I'll go Brandon. I think I'll go Brandon, just because he's just a nice guy, isn't he? And he's just scored some great goals for us. And he's another one like Scott. He's very harmless, Brandon, but I think it'd be somebody who'd be good to go up there. I think I'd have Bales as well. I think I'd go for him up there, because he's just another lovely guy, Bales, and he was somebody who was took it very seriously, like we all do. But I think he tried to lead by example quite a lot of the time, and I think he had a lot of respect from the other lads that he played with, and a lot of the lads that have played with him that are still with us now. They'll often mention about the respect they had for Bales, and so I think that'd be mine.
Now, I don't know if you heard last week's, but he could have mentioned it anyway. But Lee Jackson has a Harry Potter mug, which it was broken and put away and is covered in his house. Now, he swears that it was Mike Corral that broke it. Mike Corral swears blindly it wasn't him. Who do you reckon broke Lee Jackson's mug?
You see, Jacko's the first to blame anybody else. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what's happened. He is the first to say, well, he did it with me. It was him as well. It wasn't just me. Don't worry about, And I'm thinking, come on, Jacko, really, First of all, he comes across, as quite a cool kind of guy that, I'll go out and I'll wear, smart clothes, and I'll go to and then he's got a Harry Potter mug as well. And I'm not sure that the two go together. He's probably sat in his Armani Jamas with his Harry Potter mug. I just hate to think what would go on in that household with them two. I don't want to know, what. But yeah, I think Jacko definitely broke that, and he's just looking for a nice guy to blame, and Corral's an easy target, isn't he?
Now, we'll move over to the Twitter questions that we got in. This is from Terry Roberts. Who was your biggest influence during your playing career and also as a manager as well?
Well, as a kid, like I say, I used to go and watch Wolves quite a bit with my dad. And it was in the days where Wolves ground was like closed on three sides, and there was one side open that everybody packed into. And Steve Bull played, vast majority of games. And he just seemed, we didn't go every week, but it just seemed that every time we went to watch him, they'd win 5 or 6-0, and he'd score 3. He was unbelievable. And obviously from that got him into the England squad eventually. So he was definitely somebody. And there was another defender as well called George Berry, who ended up playing for Stafford Rangers towards the end of his career. He was a big player at Wolves. So we used to go and watch them every now and then, just because my dad was in awe of George Berry and wanted to go and watch him play. And so I suppose that's two people. Management wise, it's a bit tricky, isn't it? Because I think I like to watch games in a different way some of the time now, where I'll watch the game and then I'll listen to the interview from the manager afterwards. So a lot of the time in the Premier League, where they've come on and they've kind of justified it, and some of the stuff that they come out with is obviously so one-sided, because they don't want to let on that one of their players has had a weakness. And I quite admire that about different managers, and that I think you can learn a lot from them. So I think somebody like Fergie, who's unbelievable, and you read some of the stories about how he managed certain players and dealt with people in a slightly different way. I was reading the other week about how he dealt with Cantona in a completely different way to how he dealt with somebody like Roy Keane, and I think that's something that as a player you might not appreciate quite as much, that everyone needs to be dealt with. Some people need a rollicking, some people need an arm around them, and I think that from reading a bit about sort of how Fergie did it, I think that's something that you could kind of learn a lot from as well.
Now this one's from Two Bags of Sand. Who was the player's name that you used to shout when you used to score on the playground?
I didn't really score many. I suppose it was See, I'm quite weird in that respect that I don't really support a massive team. You know, we always used to go and watch Telford play, and we'd go and watch Wolves sometimes, who weren't anywhere near the level that they're at now. So although I'd watch a lot of the England games and people like that, you know, like Lineker and Chris Waddle and players like that, I don't remember one particular player that I'd idolised as much as a kid. I just don't remember it.
Yeah. Now, has there been a player that signed for the club that didn't work quite out for, but you thought that they'd be a big signing when they joined?
Yeah, it's interesting, that one, because I've had it myself where I've played for a couple of clubs, and then for whatever reason I just never played as well as I know that I could have done. And when I went to, for me, Market Drayton was probably the best that I played a lot of the time, because I felt comfortable. You know, I played with a lot of people there that were unbelievable players, and they ended up being really good mates as well, and I think we had that bond. So for me, I think probably the two that stand out is Jason Carey. A bit disappointed when he signed. I thought we'd expect a bit more from him. In fairness to him, you know, I think there's things that weren't his fault. You know, he didn't play in his preferred position a lot of the time. He also, I think, he travelled by himself. So I think sometimes little things like that don't help when you go in there by yourself, and he knew a few of the lads, but then when you're leaving and you're going, so I think he was one, and the other one's Tyler Edwards as well. If you remember, I think we played a game at Witton. It must have been against Witton, and he just absolutely tore it up. And then
That was the one we won the mid-Cheshire. Was that the one we won the mid-Cheshire Cup?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, and he was brilliant that day, and I really rated Tyler. And unfortunately, he just kind of lost a bit of interest in it and fell by the wayside a bit. But he's definitely somebody that we could have seen a lot more from, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, for Jake Parker's goal, this one's from Nicky. Were you in the get it wide camp, or did you think when the ball bounced, like, have a go?
I definitely wasn't in the get it wide. It's just all the time, isn't it? Get it wide, get it wide, get it wide. You know, you speak to somebody like Fred, the goal's in the middle, aim for the goal. What was funny about that was, obviously you watch the clip back and you can just hear Goody shouting get it wide, but as soon as the goal went in, I just remember, and you can see it slightly on the corner of it, I just kind of almost pushed him over, because I just wanted, you know, it was such a good goal. And I don't want to tell Jake too many times, but I don't know if it would be goal of the season or not. But yeah, I think only a player like Jake could take that kind of shot on, and we've seen it a few times where it's cleared the ground and it's gone down the road behind the goal. But it was just a good finish, that, wasn't it? You know, I don't think anybody expected it as well, just the way that he swiveled and hit it. But yeah, you can't get it wide all the time, can you?
No, well, the thing was with that, I was in America at the time, and I just saw on Twitter being like, "Oh my God, what a goal!" And then in our football group as well, people were on about it. I was there thinking, well, I'm gonna have to wait about, have a go over a 9-hour flight to get back home, then try and see if it's on Twitter when I've woke up from jet lag the next morning.
See, if it's on Twitter, you knew by the morning Jake would have put it on Instagram, Twitter, everywhere he could have done, tagged himself in it. You know, him and Cal are unbelievable for that, aren't they? They just want to, you know, put it out there all the time. You know, if it had been around 10 years ago, we'd all have been doing that.
Yeah. Now this one's from Ben Spencer. In his words, we have the strongest squad in the league. So which department do you think that we could strengthen for next season?
God, that's a bit of a tough one, isn't it? Just to single out. I think one of the best things we've got in the squad is the flexibility of players. So if you think about every player in the squad, virtually everyone has played in a different position than what you'd say is their preferred position. So, you know, Russie ended up centre half a couple of times and right back this season. Probably the only player that you wouldn't necessarily play out of position is Scott, really, because why would you play him anywhere else than down the middle? So I'm not too sure that we need to bring players in to strengthen. I think we saw last year with people like Jacko and Jonah that you talked about in previous weeks, where, you know, they filled in what you'd say wasn't be their best position or their preferred position, but in fact they were, you know, unbelievable a lot of the season. So I think it's more about maybe looking at different ways to set up, or different plays in different positions depending on who we're playing against. So I think that's something that we've definitely brought, like I say, from the huddle thing, you know, where we're looking at, right, well, in certain positions, in certain games, maybe this player might be best suited to it. Well, I think everyone agrees, you know, we all want to move on again from that season and make sure that we do get better in every way we can.
Absolutely. Now this one's from Dan. If you were playing against Scott at Golden Balls, would you split or steal?
Right, so this is where you get 30 seconds, isn't it, to discuss?
Yeah.
Now, the problem with Scott is if he starts for 30 seconds, he's never going to shut up. So I wouldn't actually get a chance to tell him what I'm going to do, because if you see him, when him and Goody get going, every now and then, if he's on the pitch, and he's shouting from 30 yards, he just never shuts up. And he just keeps saying the same point as well. Like, I'm never offside. What do you mean? And so I think Scott would probably, I think I'd have to split, and then it'd be on his conscience if I didn't win any money.
What do you reckon he'd do?
He'd steal. He's just selfish. He's a goal scorer, isn't he? He'd definitely want the money for himself. But I'd like to think afterwards, he might, he'd probably say thank you. He wouldn't give any money
away. Now this one's from Archie Spencer, and this is in his words again. At what point last season, if you did you think that we could be potentially promotion or title contenders?
Well, I thought we could before the season started, because I think we all backed ourselves, and it was like previous years where we thought we've got the potential here with the squad that we've got to do really well. I think there's a couple that stand out, like the Ashton away where Scott got sent off and it was rescinded a couple of weeks later. To win that game with 10 men, because I think Ashton are a good side and they've got a lot of good players, and it's always tough when we play them. And that was a massive belief for everybody. You could see after the game, people that were there really thought that we could do something there. I think probably games like the Rylands one at home, where obviously they were competing with us, in the top few positions, and then to beat teams that are in and around us, I think that was a big plus as well. We never really sat down saying we are going to go up, because there was still a long way to go. But I think games like that made us believe that we could, and there's definitely a belief growing amongst everybody, the players and the supporters, and a few conversations that we'd have where they'd say, oh, well, we're expecting this game now, whereas at the start of the season it'll be, well, let's see how we go today. But yeah, I think they're the two that stand out. And
finally, from Steve Rees Smith on Twitter, no, maybe you can't fully say, if you could sign one player from another club, who would it be? I mean, or you could twist it and say, as a manager, who do you admire as a player from another club that you've seen play this level?
Insert Longridge is good. Their captain who plays in the hole. I think he's a good player. I've seen him a couple of times last season, and obviously when we played against him, and he doesn't shy away from things. But again, it's like we'll have a conversation every week after the game about the opposition, just quickly about the odd player and stuff. And I just think they've got to be going some to be better than what we've currently got in terms of the squad. To come into the side or the squad and displace one of the players out of the 20 odd that we've got at the moment, they've got to be a good player, haven't they? So I think we go away and you admire quite a lot of players that we play against, but you've really got to go some to be better than the players that we've currently got.
Absolutely. And finally, just one from me, really, about the teams next year. Obviously, everyone will want to go better again. Do you expect a similar sort of outcome for the table with like the teams at the top, like ourselves, Bootle, Rylands, Longridge? Do you expect all them teams to be in and around the areas that they were again this season?
I think you'd expect that from those teams. Somebody like Bootle, they obviously just missed out the season before last, and then they did so well to come back last season because the disappointment that they could have faced, and players could have moved on and whatever. So I think you'd expect that, but I think there's so many unknowns at the moment. There's a meeting in a couple of weeks' time about the possible permutations for next season in terms of if the season starts in August, September, then what happens? If it starts in December, what happens? So it's really difficult. If they did something quite radical where every team played each other once, then you could argue that more of a chance maybe, because you've got to be consistent over a smaller amount of time. So yeah, I would expect the likes of Bootle, Rylands, Longridge, Ashton to all be there or thereabouts, but I'd also expect some of the other teams to improve. The likes of Congleton, I'd expect them to be better. I'd expect other teams, maybe like a Squires Gate, somebody like that, to not necessarily challenge, but just to be better than they were last season, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's the issue, isn't it? It's so many unknowns at the moment.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, who knows when we can return? It's just so many uncertainties at the moment. But I guess we're all going to be ready for when football does eventually return, and I can't wait for that to happen. Paul, thank you very much for joining me today, especially at short notice
No problem.
from speaking it yesterday. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for listening. Please let us know your feedback, who you'd like to see featured, and any other things that you want to suggest and put forward. We're more than willing to listen to them. So thank you very much, and we'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.